Gets in, lads. Jamaica plays Ecuador on Wednesday, June 26th, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview and predicted lineups kind of video. Before I begin, I want to remind you guys that me and Diego are actually going to be at the game, and we're going to be recording our experience there, our journey from LA to Vegas. So if you're not already subscribed and you're interested in watching that video, make sure to subscribe now and then turn notifications on so you get to see when that video is released and you can be one of the first people to experience it with us. We're going to start with Ecuador side. If you guys paid attention to their game against Venezuela, Ender Valencia, their main striker and prime main forward, in the entire attack, got a red card. So as a result, he will not be playing against Jamaica in this game because he's suspended for one game. So him not being here is actually really big for both Ecuador and Jamaica because, like I said, he's one of their best strikers in the nation's history, and him not being here with his attacking threat is really big. Their right winger Yeboah is also not going to be in this game. So that's two main starting attacking options for Ecuador that will not be present in this game, at least for the beginning. Yeboah might come on later. His list is questionable right now, so we're not entirely sure what that means in terms of him starting or his chances of playing anytime soon. But as a result, I'm just going to say he's not going to be here. So that's actually really big for Jamaica's defense, who were also very solid against Mexico, who had pretty much their full strength offense. Ecuador also know that they really need to win this game. They're already behind Mexico and Venezuela, who play in the other game. And if it's not a draw and one of them wins, that puts them at least 6 points above Ecuador, as well as the other team still being 3 points ahead of Ecuador if they don't win against Jamaica here. So they do know that they really need to win this game. But if they did lose or draw to Jamaica here, they would kind of have to compete alongside Jamaica for a spot in the next round, which was definitely not expected from a lot of fans around the world who, I mean, personally, the three of us, when we did our predictions, we put Ecuador as a favorite here. So for them to have to compete with Venezuela and Jamaica here is kind of shocking, kind of surprising, and puts them in a position that they did not expect them to be in. One thing to note from them too is they also haven't kept a clean sheet in 5 games, which is really huge for Jamaica, who didn't officially score a goal in the last game. Obviously they did, but it was disallowed because it was offsides. That's really good for Jamaica, who has an attack that really needs to get it going before the last game at least. At the very minimum, you only have 2 games left if you don't make it out of the knockout stage. So the attack really needs to get a firing, and they need to have that link up between defense and attack, so where Jamaica could get 1 or 2 goals here to at least get the morale up, and this might be the game to do it against an Ecuador team who hasn't kept a clean sheet in 5 games. And then I can expertly use this to segue into Jamaica. As for Jamaica, they don't technically need to win this game. They could draw and still have somewhat of a chance of making it into the knockout rounds, but realistically, you almost kind of do have to win this game to be safe. Like I said, there was no draws in that first round of games between the 4 teams. There's only wins, so there's already 2 teams 3 points above Jamaica, and then they play each other, so one team has a chance of going 6 points above Jamaica here. So Jamaica really need to focus on winning this game. They can't be doing the same substitutions that they did last game, which were very negative very early when they still had a foot on the pedal in the game. They still could have gotten something from the game, but the manager chose to bring on some defensive substitutions, take out an attacker, and just kind of hope for the draw. Jamaica cannot really afford to be doing that here. I feel like you kind of need to have a foot on the pedal the whole game. You need to be looking for the win the whole game, especially if it gets towards the end, 60th, 70th minute, and it's still draw or you're still down 1. You still have to kind of, try and get that last goal instead of just giving up and getting that 1 point, because 3 points here is not necessary, but quite important for the side to get here against Ecuador. And it's not going to be easy. Ecuador, like I said, are definitely the favorites in this group, at least before the tournament started. Right now, they might be a little bit shaken, especially with no attacker there. So it's not going to be easy, but there is an opportunity for Jamaica in this game because they didn't look bad against Mexico. Let's be honest. If Jamaica wins here, they could go into the top 2 spots of the group, depending on how much they score against Ecuador. So back to what I was saying, like, it's really important to keep going in this game and not just settle for a 1-goal win or a draw. You kind of have to get the goals, because if they get more than 2 or 3 goals and Venezuela loses, I think they move into the second spot based off goal differential. So it'd be really huge to score as much as they can here, not settle for anything low, as best they can. And if they have the opportunity to score and it looks like Ecuador's defense is not coping well with the Jamaican offense, keep pushing it, and don't sit back and don't make the same negative changes that they did in the last game. So let's move on to predicted lineups. I'm going to start with Jamaica's here, who's, for me, it's going to be rather similar to last game with a couple changes that looks to be more likely. We'll go back to front. Obviously, at goalkeeper, Jamali Waite still has to start this game. He looked very good against Mexico last game. He definitely was the bright spot of Jamaica's entire game plan. A lot of people consider him to be the best player in the team. He's up there for me, alongside maybe like Limbakisa, but he is showing to be a worthy replacement of the injured Andre Blake, who we still don't know when he's going to be coming back, if he is going to be coming back in this tournament. But honestly, he can relax a little bit because Waite looked very good last game. He's definitely here to maintain that same form against a very talented and very technical Ecuadorian side that could give him a lot of problems if the defense isn't there to counteract that. At right back, it has to be Dexter Lambakisa. Like I said, he was one of the best players in last game as well. At right back / that right wing back spot that he likes to play, Dexter Lambakisa has to start this game again. He had a couple of opportunities to shoot the ball from outside the box on that right side. It didn't come off the boot correctly, so they weren't the greatest opportunities. One of them almost went in, I think it was like the 88th, 89th minute. And then he also at the same time tracked back defensively very well last game. He was able to counteract Julian Quinones a good bit. Quinones still had a rather decent game on offense, so Lambakisa could do maybe a little bit better. But overall, he still was really good. He still was able to not allow Quinones to do whatever he wanted, and him being there just in general is really, really good, meaning he can track all the way down that line on attack, which you really, really need against Ecuadorian side who is really, really fast and pacey. At left back / left wing back, I still have Greg Lay starting here despite Amari Bell being in the squad. For me, mainly that's because we don't really know the status of Amari Bell's health and fitness. I don't know if he's fully healthy enough to start or not. If he is, yes, I would like to see him start here, but just to be safe, I'm going to say Greg Lay. Now, he wasn't bad last game. He wasn't particularly great either, but he did his job. That's all that matters. It's better to not be noticed than to be noticed for doing something bad in these games. So in the game against Venezuela, we saw Ecuador's right side was a lot worse than that left side. They really couldn't get much going. They really were not a bright spot in that team. So Greg Lay being on that side of Ecuador could be good for him and could allow him to produce a little bit more and get up the pitch just a little bit more and set up that attack in a way that wasn't available against Mexico. All right, now onto the center backs. I still have Ethan Pinnock and Deshaun Bernard starting, but this time I'm going to have a 2 center back pairing instead of the 3 that Heimer tends to play. I'll explain in a little bit, but let's focus on the 2 center backs right now. So Ethan Pinnock was very solid, very stable at the back last game. He looked very composed in a team that from the get-go kind of seemed very nervous. And didn't seem very composed in comparison to the rest of the team. So it's very good that Ethan Pinnock is here at the back with his composure because he's played in high-stakes game. He plays in the Premier League, so he knows exactly what it takes to play against big teams in high-stakes games, and that's exactly what you need here in a game against Ecuador, who, like I said, are probably the favorites in the group. And him being composed here is very, very necessary against a very shifty Ecuadorian attack. They're very young, they're very quick and pacey, so his composure to drop deep just a little bit more and be able to counteract that is highly necessary here because, like I said, he's used to that in the Premier League, who really only maintains a winger of that exact same caliber and archetype. So he knows what to do here, which is really important. Deshaun Bernard, on the other hand, was also very, very good in that game. I had him included in my best 11 for Jamaica, and he did get a start, and he proved it to be well. I think he was unjustly subbed out too early. I think he could have stayed on and provided the same defensive mindset and capabilities that he did throughout the game in the first half. But yeah, he was very solid against Mexico in a back 3. I'm kind of interested to see how he does in a back 2. We kind of have to see that, but I think he is going to be starting here, especially because the youth of the attack should be counteracted by the youth of the defense here. So I think that's why he starts this game again. Now, moving a little bit forward into that midfield / still defense is going to be Damian Lowe. So I think this is the perfect game to bring him back in the starting lineup. Jaime did say that he was like originally in the game plan against Mexico, but I think the couple days before the game, he had to go deal with some family issues. So unfortunately, they thought it was best to not include him in the game plan against Mexico. In the end, at least starting lineup, just because he wasn't there to prepare with the rest of the team, which makes total sense. There's no shade on him there. I mean, you have to do what you have to do, and for both manager and player. But him not being there was pretty obvious. They really needed a bigger midfield presence, especially in the CDM spot. It was way too open between the midfield and the defensive line. So I think here's the perfect game where you kind of elevate that third center back into the defensive midfield spot that can move forward when the attack is moving and then still come back to maybe still form a back 3 when necessary. And Damian Lowe is the perfect player for that. I had him in my best 11 as well, so I do think that Heimer is going to start him in this game just to try something out, just to make sure the midfield is more defensively solid, especially because Ecuador tends to play Kendry Paez in that like central attacking midfielder spot. And if you give him like too much space, he's gonna do insane things to your defense. He had some really good balls placed last game, so if he has too much room to run, it's gonna be over. That's all I'll say. If he has too much room to run, Jamaica's going to lose this game. And then just in front of that CDM is the 2 center mids. I'm going to keep it the same as last game, Casey Palmer and Bobby de Cordova-Reid. They both individually had decent games last game, and I think that circumstantially, the game made him look a lot worse than it was because they didn't have that CDM spot and the center backs were a little too far behind them. I think with the DM behind them, they gives them a little bit more chance to roam. I think it's going to make him look a lot better, and I think it's going to make the attack move forward a lot quicker and better, which is really important here because that was a big thing last game is the attack was not really linked with the defense. It was kind of just balls sent forward. So there wasn't really much build-up play. I think with the DM and these two center mids here, the build-up play is going to look a lot better. You could think about starting Kevon Lambert over Casey Palmer here, but I really don't think they're going to. I think they're going to stick with these same two center mids from the last game. And then we can move on to the attack, which I have a few things to say. We're going to talk about left wing first. Left wing, I have Damari Gray. Per usual, he did not have a really good game last game. Was very quiet in general. He had some really bad crosses. He was laughing about it afterwards. No big deal, but I think this game you still kind of have to start him. I would not really start Cephas over him. I still think you have to start Damari Gray because he still has it in him. He still has a time to show up in this tournament, especially against, I already mentioned earlier, a weak Ecuadorian right side. This could be the opportunity for him to be more present, be more direct, and set up more for Jamaica's attack. On the opposite wing, right wing is where I have the biggest difference here, and that's why I'm going to start Kahim Dixon instead of Shamar Nicholson. So if you watched my starting 11 video for Jamaica, I did put Michael Antonio at the striker and Shamar Nicholson at the right wing, where instead he kind of plays more as a second striker, and that's exactly what Heimer did. So if Heimer, if you watch this video, thank you for watching, but unfortunately, it didn't really work. Michael Antonio and Shamar Nicholson are both out-and-out strikers. They don't create much. They get the good balls in and do something with the ball after one or two touches on it. They can't create much. So to have two on the middle and right side of that game meant there was not much being created. There was not much creativity, which is very unfortunate, which sucks. But I would say that this is where you bring in a true right winger, and that's why I think you start with Kahim Dixon here. Even though he's 19 years old, I think he could do a lot. When he came in last game, he didn't look that bad. Didn't have much of an opportunity to look good, to be fair. So that's why I say you start him here. If it doesn't work, you can always make a substitution outward. But I think a true winger is kind of what you need here against Ecuador. You could maybe start Cephas on the right wing, but I think Kahim Dixon would be a really big confidence boost if you give him that opportunity. And I think he depressed, to be honest, against Ecuador. Michael Antonio has to be starting in this game against Ecuador again. He looked decent against Mexico. He was kind of let down by, I feel like, the players around him, unfortunately. He did score a goal, even though got disallowed. It was a great header. But I think he needs to be there just for his positioning. So he's there again for those crosses. He needs to be playing this game. I'm not against starting Shamar at all. I think if you want to start Shamar over Michael Antonio, it would be totally appropriate. But I think Michael Antonio has to be starting here, and you bring Shamar in later. So that was starting lineup. Let's move on to Ecuador, who have mainly some changes in the attack, but in general, I have somewhat of the same team, kind of similar to Jamaica. At goalkeeper, Alexander Dominguez needs to start this game again like he did against Venezuela. He was unfortunately one of the weaker spots of this team in that game, but I don't see any of the backups doing a whole lot better, so I think you kind of have to maintain him starting in this game. There'd be no reason to bring someone else in. At right back, Preciado is going to be the starting for me. He just needs to be better in the transition into attack. He wasn't very solid last game. Statistically, he did not look very good on the ball. So he does need to be a little bit better here in transitioning into attack, and that's what's going to kind of get Ecuador flowing just a little bit better. Defensively, he was decent, but this game you are playing against potentially Damari Gray, who is very experienced, who has the ability to go by you or, like go straight at you, and he would win that battle over Preciado. So he needs to be a little bit better here, but he's still starting for me. At left back, it's Hincapié again. Now, he didn't look that great in the game against Venezuela as well. So I do think if he's going to start here in that position, he needs to be a little bit better, both on the attack and defense. He got up down to the byline, to be honest, on attack, and just didn't give much to the attack in general, more just a body there with the ball. So if he is playing the exact same role, he needs to be doing a little bit better here. But at the same time, he might have to sit back a little bit farther than going forward, especially if Jamaica chooses to play with a true out-and-out winger. Because if he doesn't, there's not much to cover it other than Moises Caicedo, but then also that opens up the midfield a little bit better. So Hincapié should be starting here as well, but needs to sit back a little bit more. And the center backs, William Pacho and Felix Torres, are going to start again here. They didn't look great against Venezuela as well, but they're still solid. They're still very, very good center backs. I think it was just one game for them. They also had to deal with added pressure playing with 10 men. So I do think they start the game here as well. Now, the midfield is where I have one change. I do think Moises Caicedo starts, of course. I mean, he's one of the best midfielders in this entire tournament. He has to be starting every game here. But next to him, I would rather start Jose Cifuentes instead of Alan Franco. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Cifuentes doesn't start and Franco still starts, but he didn't have a good game last game, let's be honest. He did not provide enough partnership for Caicedo in that midfield. He came off, I think, with a 5.7 rating when he was subbed off. So Cifuentes kind of just gives him a chance to try something different. I do have an affection for Cifuentes, of course, because he used to be an LAFC player. I am an LAFC fan. But yeah, I think you kind of start Cifuentes or a different kind of center defensive mid as a more of a test for the games moving forward, just in case Alan Franco isn't really working out. You don't want to give him an opportunity to have a stinker again. So I would go with somebody different than Alan Franco. But we'll see. At Cam, it's Kendry Paez, of course. Kendry Paez is one of the best youth talents in the world coming to Chelsea next season, and he looks really, really good in that game for Ecuador. He creates so well. His vision for what ball to make is phenomenal. So I think despite his age, you have to start him here. You have to start him in every game, to be honest, whatever team he's at. he has to be playing here, and I think he's going to. Right wing is something different as well because, like I mentioned earlier, Yeboah is out injured, so he will not be playing in this game, or at least he probably shouldn't be starting. So this is where I put Angel Mena. I do think he's a solid starting option, but Ecuador has like 3 or 4 different right wingers, so you can start any of them. I would just start him here because experience. He is old. He is 36 years old. So experience here is going to take him a long way against inexperienced Jamaican back line. So that's why I would start him here over Yeboah or any other right wingers. But I do think if he starts here, you bring on more right wingers later on instead of just him. He's not playing the whole game. At left wing, of course, Sarmiento. He scored their only goal last game, and he's very, very good player. He was very fast. When he was on the ball, he looked very confident last game, so he has to be starting here at left wing again. And then striker, obviously, there is no more Ender Valencia. This is where I would start Kevin Rodriguez instead. He came on later in the game, or I think in the first half, and looked fairly decent. He tied with Kendry Baez with the most dribbles completed in the game. So I do think you play him here. Is going to be kind of a different profile than Ender Valencia, but I do think you almost need that against a Jamaica backline. Rodriguez is 6'3", so his height here could be really important on set pieces against a Jamaican team who definitely has more aerial superiority over Ecuador. Ecuador isn't the tallest team in the world, so him being here could really, really help the attack and for set pieces. And it could be a very good replacement for Ender Valencia in a game where they, like, obviously they're going to miss him, but Rodriguez, I think, could do a really good job. So that's all I have information, guys. Let me know if you guys have any opinions or anything different that I have here in the comments down below, because we do read every single thing. Like I said, we're going to be at this game and we're going to vlog it. So if that interests you, make sure to subscribe now. And yeah, we'll see you guys then. Hopefully, take it easy, guys.